It usually starts with a profound sense of relief. You take a test online. You scroll past a video that seems to describe your exact internal friction. Or you sit in a quiet room and a professional hands you a word. Anxious attachment, burnout, neurodivergent, childhood trauma, gifted child syndrome, executive dysfunction. And in that single moment, the weight drops. The shame disappears. You're not lazy or crazy or broken. You're simply explained. But then, a silent transformation occurs. A shift that most people never notice until it is too late. The label that was meant to be a map to your freedom quietly becomes your home. You stop using the knowledge to change the road. You start using the knowledge to decorate the walls of the cage. Welcome to the self-knowledge trap, the most comfortable, sophisticated, and socially acceptable prison of the modern mind. In the modern era, we have turned self-analysis into a high-performance sport. We track our mental states, document our traumas, and analyze our childhoods with the precision of a corporate audit. But there is a silent deficit running underneath this obsession, a psychological invoice that we quietly accrue every single day. Because the more time and energy you spend explaining why you are stuck, the less time and energy you have left to actually do the hard, uncomfortable work of getting unstuck. Understanding the pathology is not the same as curing the pathology. We have built a culture that mistakes intellectualization for progress. We believe that because we can articulate our pain in fluent, therapeutic language, we are somehow healing it. But in reality, we are often doing the exact opposite. We are using our labels as a defense mechanism to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of change. Psychologists call this the insight defense. It is a subconscious strategy where the ego agrees to study the problem indefinitely, specifically to avoid having to execute the solution. Because execution is painful, it requires risk. It requires facing the possibility of failure. Insight, however, is perfectly safe. It feels like work. It feels like growth. But it is actually a sophisticated form of stagnation. This loop has a profound cost. And the invoice is written in the years we spend talking about the life we want, instead of building it. Neuroscience tells us that the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for action and change, does not learn through contemplation. It learns through behavioral activation. Your brain does not care why you are afraid. It only cares that you took the step anyway. But when we obsess over self-knowledge, we train ourselves to wait. We wait for the anxiety to disappear. We wait for the trauma to be fully processed. We wait to feel ready. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Ready is a neurological illusion. If you wait until you feel safe to act, you will spend the rest of your life staring at the ceiling. A single raw, terrifying action teaches your nervous system more about safety than 1,000 hours of intellectual self-analysis. Because safety is not thought. Safety is lived. This is where the trap closes. The moment we believe that self-knowledge is the destination, rather than the ticket to the departure gate. To understand why we get stuck in the self-knowledge trap, we must first look at the biology of the brain itself. The human brain is a master archivist. It loves cataloging, labeling, and filing away information. And there is a very specific biological reward for doing this. When you finally find a label that explains your pain, when you have that sudden aha moment, your brain releases a burst of dopamine. It feels like progress. The chemical cascade in your nervous system makes you feel as though you have actually taken a massive step forward. But you haven't. You have simply triggered the reward center of your brain without actually paying the price of change. You are high on the illusion of progress. This is where the neurological loop begins. The brain quickly learns that it can get a comfortable dopamine hit simply by analyzing the problem over and over, without ever having to risk the discomfort of executing the solution. Psychologists call this mental pseudo-work. It is the ultimate evolutionary loophole. Your brain expends massive calories thinking about change to protect you from the terrifying vulnerability of actually changing. We tell ourselves, I just need one more piece of the puzzle. Once I understand why my childhood made me avoidant, once I process my executive dysfunction, then I will start my business. Then I will speak up. Then I will love. But the horizon of readiness is a mirage. It moves back one step for every step you take toward it. This is active procrastination. It is the most sophisticated form of self-sabotage because it wears the uniform of self-improvement. We build a monument to our idealized future self, and then we spend years analyzing why we aren't standing on top of it, rather than taking the single, awkward, muddy step required to start the climb. Neurobiology shows us that your brain is an energy conservation engine. It is designed to repeat what is familiar, even if what is familiar is painful. Creating new neural pathways is incredibly resource-intensive. This is why your nervous system will always choose a familiar misery over an unfamiliar joy. The familiar misery requires no new neural assembly. It is already fully paved. So we become addicted to our own tragic narrative. We identify so deeply with our trauma, our diagnoses, and our limitations that the prospect of living without them triggers a profound identity crisis. We ask ourselves implicitly, if I am not the anxious one, if I am not the traumatized survivor, if I am not the misunderstood genius, then who am I? Real healing is not a beautiful, quiet realization. Real healing is a violent disruption of your identity. It requires letting the person you have been die so that the person you can be can take a breath. But the emotional brain, the ancient limbic system, does not understand long-term growth. It only understands immediate safety. And to your limbic system, change equals death. This is why you cannot wait for the right energy or the perfect feeling to act. If you only act when your nervous system feels completely safe, you will only ever repeat your past. Action is not the consequence of motivation. Motivation is the consequence of action. This is the fundamental law of psychological thermodynamics. When you take a micro-action, even a tiny, clumsy one, you send a physical signal to your amygdala. You show your brain that you survived the risk. You redefine what is safe. You must stop treating your life as a history museum to be cataloged and start treating it as a laboratory to be tested. You are not an archivist. You're an experimenter. This requires expanding what psychologists call your window of tolerance, the capacity of your nervous system to sit with the friction, the anxiety, and the raw discomfort of doing the thing anyway. Forget willpower. Willpower is an exhaustible battery. Rely instead on systems. Build tiny, non-negotiable behavioral boundaries that bypass your emotional brain entirely. You do not need to feel confident to jump. You only need to let gravity do the work once your feet leave the board. The confidence is built in the water, not on the platform. The brain does not reconfigure itself before you walk. It reconfigures itself because you walked. As self-knowledge became a mainstream commodity, a new dialect emerged, therapy speak. We learned to dress our avoidance in clinical language, transforming our fears into a brilliant, socially impenetrable armor. But we made a dangerous trade-off. We mistook a clinical diagnosis for a lifetime license to remain exactly as we are. When we say, "I can't do that because of my trauma," or "I can't commit because of my avoidant attachment," we are often not practicing self-care. We are using our self-knowledge to silence the demands of life. There is a silent economy of validation that feeds this behavior. In the digital age, sharing our wounds yields instant social currency. We are rewarded with attention for documenting our brokenness. The algorithms of modern culture actively reward the pathologization of daily life. Normal human frictions, sadness, nervousness, social awkwardness, are rebranded as chronic conditions to be studied, rather than challenges to be overcome. But there is a monumental difference between validation and excuse. Validation explains why a task is exceptionally hard for you. An excuse is the decision to stop trying altogether. And the invoice of this distinction is incredibly steep. Every year you spend working on yourself, in isolation, waiting for the perfect alignment of your mental health before you take action, is a year you lose. We see this in our relationships. We use our clinical labels as a shield, saying, "This is just how my attachment style is," allowing us to wound others without ever having to do the heavy lifting of self-regulation. Here is the golden rule of behavioral psychology. You are not responsible for the trauma that broke you, but your healing is 100% your responsibility. No one is coming to save you from your explanations. The trap of victimhood is that it is incredibly cozy. It places the blame for our stagnation entirely on the past, leaving our present completely free of accountability. It is a peaceful, slow death. Your inner child may have been the passenger who suffered the crash, but the adult in you must be the driver who takes the wheel. You cannot let a wounded 8-year-old steer your career, your finances, or your love life. In our quest to be gentle with ourselves, we have often castrated our natural resilience. We have forgotten that human beings are anti-fragile. We do not grow in sterile, trigger-free environments. We grow through controlled exposure to friction. If you isolate yourself from everything that triggers you, you will build a life that is perfectly safe, perfectly quiet, and entirely empty. You will have cured the disease by killing the patient. A trigger is not a signal to run. It is a biological roadmap. It is your nervous system pointing directly to the wound that has not yet been integrated into your strength. This is the tyranny of wellness, the belief that you must be perfectly aligned, completely healed, and entirely calm before you can pursue your dreams. It is a lie designed to keep you consuming. The people who build extraordinary lives do not live without fear, trauma, or doubt. They simply learn the art of doing the work while terrified. They carry their wounds with them as they run. Because time does not pause for your healing. The calendar is a brutal, objective accountant. It counts every day you spent explaining your limitations as a day you chose not to live. This is the psychological opportunity cost. The price of the books you read is cheap. The price of the decades you spend reading them without executing is astronomical. We often fall into the trap of intellectual snobbery. We believe that because our suffering is complex and highly analyzed, it is somehow more noble than the simple, gritty struggle of action. This is why people who know absolutely nothing about pop psychology often change their lives overnight. They do not have a vocabulary to explain why they are stuck, so they simply move. When you talk about your problems, your brain experiences a false sense of resolution. The emotional release, the catharsis, makes you feel like you solved the issue, while the physical reality of your life remains completely unchanged. Therapy and self-analysis without behavioral change is just a monthly subscription to buy temporary relief from your guilt. It is an expensive way to remain the same. The world does not care about your explanation. The market does not pay for your insight. Your relationships do not heal because you understand why you hurt them. The universe only responds to what you do. It is time to tear up the death certificate of your potential. You have studied the cage long enough. If self-knowledge is the trap, how do we escape it? The answer is both incredibly simple and terrifyingly difficult. You do not need to find a magical key. You simply need to realize that the door is, and has always been, wide open. We must declare the end of the era of pure reflection. It is time to enter the era of radical behavioral pragmatism. B.F. Skinner, the father of modern behaviorism, discovered a profound truth. You do not change a human being by changing their mind. You change a human being by changing their environment. Do not rely on your emotional state to perform. Design your environment to make action the path of least resistance. If you want to write, leave the notebook open on your desk. If you want to wake up, place the alarm clock across the room. Adopt the 5-minute behavioral experiment. When you face a task you dread, tell your limbic system, "We are only going to do this for 5 minutes. We are just collecting data. If we want to stop after 5 minutes, we will stop." This shifts your neurological focus from introspection to execution. You stop asking, "How do I feel about doing this?" and start asking, "What is the physical action required right now?" Embrace the beauty of the messy draft. A terrible, flawed, incomplete attempt is infinitely more valuable to your nervous system than a perfect, unexecuted plan. This is the clinical science of systematic desensitization. You do not cure your fears by analyzing them in an armchair. You cure your fears by exposing your nervous system to them, millimeter by millimeter, until the panic dissolves into familiarity. Treat rejection and failure not as an indictment of your soul, but as an essential metric of effort. If you are not failing, you're not testing the boundaries of your cage. This is how we end the misuse of diagnoses. Instead of saying, "I have ADHD, so I cannot work," we say, "I have ADHD, so I have designed a visual workspace that eliminates digital friction." Use commitment devices. Bypass your future weak-willed self by making stakes public, investing money up front, or automating your accountability. Make the cost of inaction higher than the cost of action. Your identity is not a static museum piece hidden in your mind. Your identity is the sum of your repeated behaviors. You are not what you think you are. You are what you do. Forget the myth of the perfectly healed self. You do not need to be completely healed to live an extraordinary life. Happiness is not the absence of wounds. It is the presence of meaningful action. Learn to distinguish between self-care and self-paralysis. True self-care is not always comfortable. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to force your body to do the hard thing anyway. Reconnect with the physical world. Plant your feet in reality. Build physical things. Speak to physical people. Collect real, tangible data from the real, tangible universe. And when you do this, something beautiful happens. The endless, exhausting mental noise in your head begins to fade. The brain finds its peace not in contemplation, but in execution. True self-knowledge is not a theoretical premise you start with. True self-knowledge is the empirical data you collect after you have spent years living. It is time to step out of the book. The analysis is complete. The diagnostic phase is closed. The experiment is live. Look back at the cage one last time. Notice how small it looks. Notice how easy it is to simply walk away. The real world is messy. It is unpredictable. It has no neat labels. And it is waiting for you. Stop searching for more insights. Start collecting more scars. The scars of attempts. The scars of risks. The scars of a life actually lived. Close the books, stop the search, tear down the blueprint. Because the ultimate cost of any behavior is the life you didn't live while you were busy explaining why you couldn't. This is the Behavior Report. Subscribe if you are ready to pay the price of action. See you in the next report.